I'll call this budget hearing to order. It is now 6 p.m. And off the agenda, I will I'll note that Matt Scott was unable to make it right along with Councilman Paul Winston and Councilor Bill Hicks. But the work of the borough goes on. Just give us all a little extra power tonight. So, little extra weight for it. I'm going to be real brief, and then I'll pass it on to the borough manager to walk us through the budget. This is a $45 million plus budget among the 8 funds that we have. And we'll all sit here and pat ourselves on the back as elected officials. We're doing this without a tax increase this year, but the truth is that all this is done because of the hard work of staff, from the borough manager, the finance director today, and all of your staff, right down along all the departments. And the only reason that this borough functions as well as it does is because of the work you all do every single day. So I think that's the most important thing to recognize every year at budget time, that this all gets done because of you, and how appreciative we are of the work you all do. And I know it's been very challenging over the last several years. And it was particularly important, I think, this year and last year, not to laden our residents with unnecessary fee increases and tax increases because of the weight of the economic downturn that many of our residents are feeling. And I hope everybody, although we're sitting here before an empty Borough Hall, except for one, thank you for being here, Tony. But so communicate to the rest of the folks out there that, maybe this is a sign that we're doing something right. People aren't showing up with torches and pitchforks, but it's because of all the work that you all do. Now, the budget is a set of priorities. When you really think about that, it's where we are prioritizing the funds that we receive from primarily taxpayers and other fee users. And those priorities guide us as we go forward. These are what we fund are core services that this borough relies on, that every resident relies upon, from the police department to the fire department, the quality of life issues, Parks and Rec, all those pipes and everything under the ground and the roads that people love to complain about, but the work gets done each and every day, short-staffed oftentimes over this last year. So I'll once more say thank you to all of you, and then I'll turn it over to the borough manager to take us forward.
Thank you, sir. Before we get started with tonight's overview of the borough's fiscal year 2022 proposed budget, which, as Deputy Mayor Schultz indicated, is in excess of $45 million, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved in its preparation. Department heads, senior staff, supervisors, budget managers, and team members alike, but most notably our Director of Finance, Richard Juday, who has the heavy lift this time of year. Our process actually begins the first week of July annually with capital improvement project requests due by mid-August, along with fiscal year ending 2021 projections and fiscal year 2022 budget proposals due at the same time. Each department head or budget manager is then scheduled to meet with the manager's office and Director of Finance that includes a detailed review of each department's budget lines, and I mean a detailed review. In September, fiscal year ending 2021 projections, along with budgetary lines for fiscal year 2022, are analyzed very closely. We then meet with department heads again when deemed appropriate for another review of specific requests. You'll hear more about that as we go through this evening's meeting. By October, we do our best to finalize any rate or fee proposals, which are then incorporated into the required manager's budget message and budget document that is now before you for consideration. I personally think you will find that the fiscal year 2022 proposed budget reinforces the borough's commitment to sustainability, resiliency, and equity as we monitor, manage, and maximize our resources responsibly. We invest in our community, we elevate accountability, and ensure constant delivery of services. Examples of each of these will be highlighted tonight, but moreover can be found throughout the 380-page fiscal year 2022 budget document. I'd like to also extend my sincere appreciation to our entire staff for carrying out their work responsibly and seamlessly this year in delivery of those services critical to our community's health, safety, and well-being. As we move through this evening's overview of each of the borough's funds and hearing from each of the department heads on their respective departments, one will get a sense of our organization. Community-focused, responsive, and diligent in our mission and in our roles as public servants. So I'm going to just do a brief overview, and then we're going to pass it over to the Director of Finance, and he will give an overview of each of the respective funds. So, go ahead. All right, so as we indicated, there will be a budget overview this evening that Richard will go over of the primary fund, the general fund, as well as the other proprietary funds. This just gives you a snapshot of what the status of each of those funds looks like. Next slide. I talk a little bit about stewardship at the local level. 20 months into the global pandemic, our commitment to public service has not wavered. We continued, as Council has supported, a moratorium on utility terminations, offered assistance to rental properties, applying for the Cumberland County Rental Assistance Program to provide rental assistance as well as assistance with utility bills. Borough Council actually created a utility assistance program for homeowners through our CARES Act money. That program will be launched very shortly and will be offered to homeowners to assist with their utility bills that are in arrears. We had a moratorium on long-term parking meter enforcement from March 2020 to September of 2021. We continue to this day, believe it or not, the delivery of trash bags. So you can still order those online, and individuals can still pick, and individuals can have those delivered to their home. We continue to support our downtown businesses with the curbside pickup red bags. As we know, we were awarded the All-America City Award this past year, and those focused on 3 community-driven projects. One was addressing racial inequity and highlighting the work at Lincoln Cemetery. Another one was the Carlisle Community Action Network's response to issues related to the pandemic. And then, of course, our Climate Action Commission's efforts to ensure inclusiveness and equity while addressing climate change. And there is the award. We've also done, I thought, quite well in advancing community engagement. We'll continue to improve, even going into fiscal year 2022. But as you know, we've upgraded to technology throughout Town Hall, as well for in-person attendees experience, as well as live streaming. We launched the Engage Carlisle, which is the online community engagement tool. One of the most popular projects to date on that particular platform has been the Fairground Avenue Linear Park, as well as the Bedford and East Street corridor traffic improvements. So it's really starting to become a popular tool. However, we also recognize that traditional engagement tools also are a means for us to reach individuals that may not be equipped with technology, as well as giving us the experience to be face-to-face with our residents. So there's certain initiatives that we've done with door hangers, mailers, and neighborhood meetings as well. For example, the Carlisle Community Action Network, we, in collaboration with them, we distributed a lot of door hangers with respect to the pandemic, indicating where individuals could get vaccinated, as well as information on the COVID itself. Next. We also, as we're aware, it's coming up 1 year now for the town hall that Deputy Mayor Schultz facilitated on racial inequity and systemic racism. And out of that conversation that day, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission concept came about. There's 7 members of that commission who meet on a monthly basis. And part of this evening's budget includes supporting and advancing their work. We also have, part of the budget is the new restructuring of the former Planning, Zoning, and Codes Department. We recognized that we needed to take a holistic approach to sustainability to advance economic development, community planning, and sustainable growth strategies. We expect to have our new Sustainable Community Economic Planning Director on by the beginning of December, and one of the primary goals will be to support socially equitable and inclusive policies, programs, and opportunities. The climate change objective of Borough Council has also advanced well. We expect the action plan to be submitted by December of 2021. Part of the and you'll hear often collaboration this evening. So we've collaborated with Widener and Dickinson students who are developing draft policies for consideration by council. I should say, land use policies, as well as climate change concerns, etc. So that more to come on that. Okay, fiscal soundness. We earned an AA1 credit rating from Moody's Investor Services, which I believe Director Jude would tell you is one of the top ratings that a borough of our size can achieve. There's one level higher, correct?
That's correct.
Quarterly financial presentations on activities and budget status. We started to implement that in 2021 as a way to elevate transparency and also to engage with our community so that they too get an idea of where their money is being spent. Fiscal year 2020, we had an independent and single audit, no findings or comments, and we actually received an unmodified audit opinion, which is the highest that we can receive. I talk a little bit about the CARES Act funding in my budget message. I think it's necessary to talk about those because it's a good example of how we're maximizing funding sources in order to advance some of the community initiatives that we're doing. For example, in 2020, we did receive $227,901. In December of 2020, $150,000 of that went back out the street to 46 small businesses in the form of grants. 2021, Council received a second allocation of funding and $159,107. Out of that, $63,000 went into the utility bill assistance program. $40,000 was designated for our emergency services providers within the Borough of Carlisle. So, and that program will launch shortly. I know there's a lot of discussion about the $9.1 million that the borough is, it anticipates receiving through the American Rescue Plan funding. What you will find in the budget document this evening is about $730,516 of that we would like to designate funding for, understanding that Borough Council is going to discuss this, a funding plan as part of their upcoming biennial goal planning session, which is typically held in February-March timeframe. So, but out of tonight's discussion, we are making a proposal to launch a co-responder pilot program. I know that Deputy Mayor Schultz has been instrumental in the discussions with the county, and I know that we have had those conversations among the police department and management, as well as council, in launching a program that's envisioned to bring more supportive services and connecting individuals with the services necessary when the police are called upon, and connecting individuals to individuals or services of individuals that may need assistance with that may be experiencing mental health crises or other types of crises. So we can go into detail on that. Right now we have $100,000, I believe, earmarked for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
We are looking at a new records management system for the police department, about $100,000. We have about $500,000 requested for a stormwater and traffic improvements in the northeast quadrant of the borough. Mark Malrich will talk more about that during his highlights. And we have a small earmark for cybersecurity.
31,000.
Another popular program within the borough has been the Home Grant Fund program. The borough was successful in submitting an application to DCED several years ago. We were awarded $553,000 in home grant funds to rehabilitate a blighted property. We took that property, raised it, and essentially just completed 2 townhouses built on that property for first-time home buyers that are deemed credit eligible and of low to moderate income level. And let's see here, again, fiscal year 2020, the year of the pandemic. We controlled discretionary spending. We placed a hiring moratorium on positions, and we were actually able to close a significant budget deficit that at one time was estimated to be approximately $1.2 million. And we actually ended with an audited surplus in fiscal year 2020 of about $499,000. Fiscal year 2021, we estimated revenues conservatively, reduced expenditures. We had a temporary freeze on 6 positions till July 1st. And right now it looks like, again, it's just the initial projections that we have in place, that we were actually to reduce our deficit. We built fiscal year 2021 with a deficit of $630,000. Looks like early projections show that we've reduced that or narrowed that gap to about $260,000. Next.
the next slide?
Oh, okay, fiscal year 2022, sorry about that. So fiscal year 2022, drum roll, sorry. Continued monitoring of open positions. You're going to hear that. That's going to be a constant theme with us. Before we fill positions, we are taking a very close look at each and every position and figuring out whether or not the position itself needs filled, or if there's a way to collaborate with others and within the departments, or even outsourcing. So taking a really close look at that. There are certain positions that are proposed to not be filled until April 1st. There's several at September 1st, and I think one's June 1st. We've actually been very successful in addressing organizational needs through restructuring and allocating additional resources to meet those needs. We can go into more detail when we go through the different highlights as well. You're going to find in the fiscal year 2022 budget, it includes a cost of living adjustment and merit adjustments for eligible non-uniform personnel. And of course, your uniform personnel, we have a binding contract with them. On average, the compensation's coming for non-uniformed at 3.75%, uniforms 3.77%. Another snapshot, and you'll hear more about it as well from, I know, the HR manager. We are addressing healthcare costs, formed a working group early in fiscal year 2021 of non-uniformed employees who were charged to bring back recommendations to me for potentially reducing costs and providing different options for healthcare under our plan. They came back, they took it extremely serious, and it was facilitated by Richard. Amy joined in those discussions as well, and they actually came back with a recommendation to increase employee contributions to that plan, implement a health savings account option, and with that health savings account option, and you'll hear more once we get to the HR section on what that looks like. We are also, and this was not a recommendation by the working group, this is something that I believe is necessary in order to keep costs in control, and especially in response to the impact that COVID has had on our healthcare costs this year. I'm recommending unvaccinated employees contribute to healthcare at a higher cost in fiscal year 2022. Okay, now with that being said, now we'll get into more of the details of each of the budgets. Richard's going to give an overview of each of those budgets.
Right. Okay. Get started. So the general fund. This fund is our majorly financed by taxes. So it's important, that we remain responsible with that funding, and I hope that you see that we are. But I want to take a jump back to start and look at historical performance. It's important in how we developed the conclusion to not raise taxes this year and how we plan for the future. As Susan mentioned, 2020, we had a big deficit. The ending budget was estimated at about $581,000 that we were going to use out of reserves, and that actually ended up giving us a surplus of $500,000. What that's a sign of is our job doesn't end when council adopts its budget. Throughout the year, the budget managers are constantly reviewing costs, programs, and determining, what can we do to ensure that we're being responsible with the funding. So 2020 was an impressive year in that regard. Same thing with fiscal year 2021, just reducing costs. We're hoping, by the end of the year we can reduce it more, but we'll see when all is said and done where we end up with that. Fiscal year 2020, just a brief highlight, no property tax increases proposed. Looking historically, since we've been able to manage that budget, we're hoping that we can close this 2022 budget a little more when all is said and done. We are appropriating fund balance as we did in 2020 and in 2021 for operating costs. I'll get into that a little bit later. And we're going to see a slight increase in revenue, but a much larger increase in expenses, and that's typical. With this fund being primarily funded by taxes, unless we make a tax rate change, it's going to be a slow change to revenues. So for 2022, we have about $914,000 that we're using out of reserves. $523,000 of that is an operating deficit. That means that we don't have operating revenues to cover operating expenses. Typically, we use fund balance to cover one-time costs and capital needs. We are using $340,000 in 2022 for capital needs and another $50,000 for one-time costs. But that 523, that is something that we monitor year to year, and that's what we really want to evaluate when we consider a tax rate increase. In 2021, our operating deficit was $630,000. So it has gone down some, and that's primarily due to the 2021 debt issuance. We got a really good interest rate, so our expectations have decreased as to what those costs are going to be. Our budget expenses are increasing this year, and again, that's due to the Capital Projects Fund. In 2021, we didn't have to transfer money to the Capital Projects Fund to cover capital needs. We had funding available in there from prior years. But 2022, we are going to cover some of those costs from the general fund. Healthcare costs rising on average 6.6%. So that's a big cost. Salaries and benefits are the primary expenses in the general fund. It's about $8.5 million out of a $13 million budget. So when we look at cutting costs, where we achieve the most is when we delay hirings or evaluate positions and see how can we shift responsibilities, and so that's where we see the real savings. So having the healthcare rise 6.6% is not helping us. But the employees, as Susan mentioned, are contributing about $56,000 additional in 2022 towards that healthcare cost. So we're seeing a slight dent in there. And additionally, the general fund is including new governmental services. The co-responder program's new. $100,000 is no small chunk of change. So it's impacting overall costs. And additionally, the $32,000 for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is an additional new program that you'll see in this budget. Okay, this table, we show this table to identify the decisions that we made during the budget process. It's a little small, but I'll talk you through it. At the top, you'll see $177,000 in budget decreases. What that is primarily the costs of full-time salaries and benefits that we delayed. As Susan mentioned, there are some positions that we're looking at starting in September, some in April. The cost of not budgeting those for a full year has allowed us to reduce the budget by $177,000. Bad news is, if we choose not to eliminate the positions altogether, those costs will come back in 2023 when the positions are filled. Going down that list are a bunch of smaller costs that the budget managers made that they reduced from their proposed 2022 budget. So when the manager's office and the finance office met with each one of them, they gave us a proposed budget. Each one of them stayed pretty close in terms of the operating costs. Again, like I said, payroll is the biggest. But their operating costs were pretty consistent, and they still were able to cut down additional items, but we wanted to present those here because even though they're small, it shows that they're taking a look everywhere to see where can we save some money. So when all said and done, that's about $250,000. This table shows a look at the adjustments we made to capital. The real savings is from the eliminations, $166,000 in capital projects that we eliminated from our 5-year CIP plan. The top item there, that's our truck enforcement vehicle. It was a program the police was considering implementing. I think they did a trial run and decided that it's not a program that they're going to put in the next 5 years, so we took that out. Additionally, we look at each one of our vehicles to determine can we push replacement out on this vehicle, and 2 of the vehicles in the general fund for codes are in really good shape, low mileage, so we're not going to replace them until it's necessary. So they came out of our 5-year CIP plan. And the other items going down, I'll pass over to Mark to kind of go through it, and Susan, but these are items that have remained in our 5-year CIP plan, but were pushed out from this budget. So they provide us temporary savings, but they're still on the horizon.
All right, for the first item there that was pushed out 1 year, that's roadway roundabouts. That was a proposed roadway improvement project at the intersection of Southwest Street, Quantiquan Road, and Willow Street near the YMCA. Because of the Carlisle Carlisle Connectivity Project and that work continuing, we felt it would be prudent to push this project out a little bit further. Also, it gives us more time to look for potential grant funds that may be able to be applied to this project.
Yes, next on that list is a license plate reader. That was the police department, and in conversations with Chief Landis, they are more than comfortable pushing that out 1 year. The P25 radio project, I lean heavily on Chief O'Donnell on that. This actually is going to be a huge ticket item for the Borough of Carlisle, as well as a number of our county municipalities going forward. As we upgrade our radios to be consistent with the county's new system that they're going to launch in
June of 2023.
Thank you, sir. Couldn't remember the date on that. This is just the hit to the general fund. So recall that we have other employees working elsewhere in the borough on, utilities. So that gives you an idea of just the hit that this will be. The Borough Hall HVAC improvements, that continues to get punted out because we'll want to take a very comprehensive look at this building. We have tenants downstairs, the Cumberland Area Economic Development Corporation. Their lease will be up in a matter of, I believe, 2 years, and depending if they stay or what happens there, depends on what programming may look like here within this building. So we're fine holding off. I know that Andrew and I had some conversations on the multi-purpose room over at Stewart Community Center, comfortable pushing that out a year. Administration, staff car, very low miles on that vehicle, and so we're comfortable pushing that out 2 years, and Mark will talk on the salt brine system.
And the last item there is a salt brine system. That's a system where you apply liquid salt for putting on hard salt for snow and ice control. Looking at that as far as a cooperative program with an adjacent municipality. We haven't yet found a partner for that, so pushing that and give us a little bit more time to find someone who may be interested in teaming with us on that.
Okay, so our capital for the in the capital projects fund, which is primarily funded by the general fund over the next 5 years, that's about $16 million that we're looking at. So we pushed out 1.2 million of that. Help reduce some of the burden in the 2022 budget. As Councilor Schultz mentioned, no tax increase for 2022. Looking at the historical performance, we think that we can manage this budget, and we'll certainly do our best to reduce the deficit that you see there, and evaluate as we move forward what we need to do. Certainly, there is a structural deficit there, and at some point, the management can only go so far. So we'll evaluate going forward, but in 2022, the budget is not proposed to have a tax increase. Our fund balance goal is met. I want to talk a little bit about that. So when we look at our fund balance in terms of budgeting, this is a look at what do our reserves have to be to meet operating expenses. So our general fund is at, it can manage about 54% of all operating expenses in a given year. So if we were to just stop receiving revenues, which was handy during COVID to help us cover costs, that reserve is there to help meet that balance. You'll find as we move throughout the budget, our enterprise funds have a much larger reserve balance, and that again is primarily because their costs are not necessarily operating, it's the capital needs and the infrastructure in place. So we are meeting the fund balance goals of council for the general fund. We don't plan to issue any debt. We did that in 2021, and that will cover us at least through 2022.
We have $7 million in general fund capital improvements budgeted for next year. The main item is continuation of the Carlisle Connectivity Project. That includes the travel project on B Street and Fairmount Avenue. We expect that project to be completed next year. The roundabout at North College and B Street being constructed in the spring of 2022. We also expect that the second component of that, which we refer to as Project 1, that's work on North Hanover Street from North Street to Carlisle Spring Road. We expect that to go out to bid next year and construction to start near the end of the year. And those two projects are 5.3 of the $7 million. We have several other projects included in there. The biggest of which is the upgrade of the traffic signal at Pitt and West High Street. We'll be undertaking that using some general fund and also some grant funds that we secured and that I'll get into later in the evening.
Okay, now we'll get into a little local government 101. Our real estate tax, that's our primary revenue source for the general fund. It's that big, ominous gray piece of pie there. I think that's 37% of our overall revenue comes from real estate taxes. The next biggest chunk there is other taxes. So taxes really carry the general fund. The real estate tax can only grow through construction of new homes, businesses, or through the county reassessment. That hasn't been done, I think, since 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So that doesn't happen often. And the borough it's built out. There's not a whole lot of room to grow. We try to cram everything we can in here, but you can't expect too much revenue from that. And in line with that, the major project that we have going on right now is over where the hotel's being built. You might think we'll get revenue from that, but as you may recall, all the additional revenue we get from that build out goes right into paying debt service on that project. So not a lot of revenue planning from that end. This graph here shows the property taxes as a percent of general fund revenue, what share that it's had. Like I said, 37% in 2022 as planned. That gets adjusted based on our other revenue sources. So over time, our other revenue sources have shown decreases. So the rate at which the taxes cover rises. But in 2022, we're going to use a little bit of American Rescue grant dollars, which helps reduce that down a little bit. Our current tax millage rate, 3.495. So for every $1,000 that your property is assessed, you'll pay $3.49 on that. A property valued at $150,000 will pay a bill of about $524 to the borough. We would need to adjust that rate to 4.105 if we want to maintain council's goals through 2026. That'll be about a $91.50 increase for a property valued at $150,000. Now, again, we say that's through 2026, but successful budget managing may extend that out, just depending. This is a visual aid of what share $1 would be to the taxing bodies. So that's between the school district, the county, library, and the borough. So every time you pay $1 towards taxes, 73 cents of that is going to the school, 16 cents going to the borough. So while we certainly have probably the most visibility of all the municipality taxing bodies, the borough share is not the largest. All right, we'll move on to our water fund. This is an enterprise fund, so we build rates and charge rates based on customers' usage. As I alluded to about the fund balance goal, we've met that for the water fund, and it definitely exceeds council's goal, and that's by design. 2018, we did a rate study to determine what rates our water customers needed to pay in order to fund the infrastructure improvements through 2026 at least. So you'll find that in 2022, while we have an operating surplus of $377,000, we're currently using $322,000 of that for existing 2022 capital needs. So we end up with about $56,000 in true surplus. We are proposing a rate increase for water, 3.48%. That comes out to about $2 for a single user, $9 for a family of 4, average usage. We compare every budget cycle to the surrounding municipalities in Cumberland County and see where we fall on that. The Borough of Carlisle is the 5th lowest of those that we compared against. So we try to make sure that we manage that cost. The water fund, again, not planning to issue any debt, and you will see no debt issuance for many of the funds in 2022, given that we have the available funding from this recent year.
We do have in the budget almost $5 million in capital improvements planned. When you look at any of these enterprise funds, from the water to the sewer, stormwater, when you look at the operating fund, how much it costs to pay labor, buy materials, keep the lights on, that's less than half of the total cost for operation and maintenance of these utilities. We have very old utilities in the borough, which means that they require a lot of investment in order to keep them in good operating condition. We did a study a couple years ago for the water distribution system, and that study recommended replacing 1.5 to 2 miles of water distribution pipeline per year. That comes out to $2 million to $3 million a year in improvements just to replace pipes, so that we continue to are able to provide clean water to our customers and not have excessive amounts of non-breaking. For next year, we're proposing several projects, including $3 million for water system rehabilitation in the downtown area, replacing the transmission line from the water treatment plant to our reservoir, and also painting the Ridge Street water tank. We painted the Penn Street water tank a couple years ago. Put Carlisle's name on the top. We intend to do the same thing, not on the top, on the side. We intend to do the same thing at Ridge Street. These are the Ridge Street tank, I believe, was installed in the 1930s, so it still needs to be repainted on a regular basis.
And then I just want to say one more thing about the rate increase. from that 2018 study in case people might get fatigued from regular rate increases. The way that study was designed was that through 2022, there would be regular rate increases to get us through 2026. So initially when the study was developed, it was thought that after 2022, we could hold off increasing the rates again and start drawing down on that excess fund balance that we have to cover the infrastructure costs, and then evaluate as we go year to year then how do we need to adjust it from there. So while we're increasing it this year, the thought is as we go forward, we're going to draw down more and more on that existing available fund balance reserve. Moving on to our stormwater fund, that's our new fund established in 2019. That's to manage all of our stormwater needs. That fund is meeting council's established goal. That means that we want to have enough reserves to cover at least 25% of the operating expenses. As Mark said, the enterprise funds, the operating expenses are just a small part of the overall fund, with the primary cost being capital. We don't propose a 2022 rate increase in the stormwater fund when that was initially established. It was established at a rate that would at least last 5 years. We're still within that period, so we don't have a rate increase proposed in this budget. No debt issuance, and
as far as capital improvements for 2021, we started this year on the evaluation of the stormwater system, develop a stormwater master plan. We expect that plan to be completed next year, and that will lay out a list of recommendations as far as projects to maintain water quality, meet our permit needs, and also prevent flooding. We have included in the budget some funds to pay for the first round of these projects. Other projects include purchasing a leaf vacuum truck next year, so that in the fall of 2022, we can provide enhanced service to residents of the borough so they don't have to bag their leaves. Also, we have a project proposed on North Pitt Street to install a stormwater collection and conveyance system to divert stormwater from that road over to the former IAC site, and utilize some of the infrastructure that the developer installed for that project.
yeah, our sewer fund. So our fund balance goals met. This fund is, we're very active in this fund. So almost every year we budget about $3 million just on sewer rehabilitation alone. Very, very capital heavy. So we will meet fund balance goals for 2022. Our operating surplus, our operating revenues exceed operating expenses by $1.3 million, but $900,000 of that is going to capital. And the remainder of that's budgeted to be used in the next 5-year CIP plan. It's got a purpose. Our 2022, we have a rate increase, 3.37%. This is the recommendation from that 2018 rate study. Actually, this rate was proposed for 2021, but it was decided to postpone that. So we're implementing that in 2022 in order to stay in line with the expectations of that study and get us through 2026. Again, the single user will see about a $2 increase per bill, and a family of 4 will see about $11 increase per bill. No planned debt in this either.
We do have $3.5 million in the budget. That primarily is continuation of the sanitary sewer system rehabilitation project. Several years ago, council funded a project to look at our sanitary sewer system and try to address issues related to extraneous flow, leading into the system, leading to flooding, and issues at the wastewater treatment plant. We've been undertaking that project over the last 4 years. I'll go into that, some of the issues related to the project when I did my report, but we're proposing a continuation of that project next year, focusing on the area tributary to Pumping Station 2, which is the West Ridge Street Pumping Station. We also have included in the budget hiring a consultant to do a detailed evaluation of our biosolids program. Biosolids is material left over from the treatment process. We have in the 5-year CIP almost $9.5 million next year for a construction of a aerobic digester to improve our biosolids from Class B to Class A, so that we have more disposal options and also to address odor issues. Before we undertake that expensive project, we want to make sure that what we're thinking of doing is the most appropriate. So there's about $150,000 in next year's budget to undertake that study and have that completed before next year's budget.
That planned capital is actually 39% of the overall expenditure budget for the sewer fund.
Okay, moving on to our solid waste fund. This fund is challenging, I guess to say the least, and it doesn't give me a break, but we'll get through this. Fiscal year 2021, we budgeted an $87,000 operating deficit. Current expectations is we'll end somewhere around $48,000. We'll see how things shake out by the end of the year. Fiscal year 2022, we are not proposing to increase bag rates, but collection services will rise by 3%. Now, 2022 is the final year of our collection contract. So it's a big year for us to evaluate the program, see where we can achieve savings, and be most responsible for stakeholders. This graph here shows what happened. 2020 was the start of our new collection service. It went from 800,000 to 1.6. Sorry, can't see it. $1.6 million. And then, it's hovering right around that for the remainder of the year now. Now I say costs are increasing by 3%. 2020 was the biggest because we had to replace all the existing bags, all the recycling bins. It was a very cost-intensive year, and going forward, that didn't give us any breaks. But we do expect it to be less than 2020. Our fund balance goal is not met. This is the only fund where we won't meet council's goal. The good news is operating expenses in this fund are minor. The cost of collection services is pretty much offset by the cost of the bag. 2022 will be the first year that it's not. But the other services, we can cover with reserves. We're planning to use $147,000 in reserves in 2022. For this fund, a fund balance reserve is necessary in the event that a piece of equipment at our compost facility fails. We anticipate that we need $100,000 available should an emergency arise. We're anticipating to have about $70,000 remaining by the end of 2022. So should something happen and all the stars don't align, we would need to provide a loan from the general fund or evaluate grant opportunities. When we looked at the bag rate, we didn't propose to increase it in 2022. Even though we have a deficit and even though the contract is increasing, we have an opportunity to make changes to this program. We want to make sure that we're being responsible and evaluating all opportunities to do that without burdening the ratepayers with an increase when we might be able to achieve savings elsewhere. If we were to increase the bag rate, we would need a bag cost of $6.57 per bag to eliminate the $147,000 operating deficit in 2022. No planned capital and no planned debt. All right, our parking fund. So in fiscal year 2021, we project that we'll have a deficit of $163,000. Fiscal year 2022, we are not projecting or not recommending a parking rate increase. The reason for that is we increased our rates when we installed the new meters, but we haven't really had an opportunity to evaluate what that adjustment to rates has provided us, given the fact that we had a moratorium on parking due to COVID, and the services that we offer not implementing the gold meters until September, I believe it was. We need a year to really take a look at what revenue are we going to generate from these smart meters before we increase it this time. In 2022, the operating expenses will just be slightly over operating expenses. So we aren't using fund balance for operating needs, but we will use about $90,000 to cover capital costs. Revenues, we anticipate to decrease by 3.8%, and expenditures to increase by 8%. And I'll get a little into what makes that up. Our fund balance goal is met here. Primary cost for this, we have that beautiful parking garage over there. Needs $100,000 in maintenance regularly. So to keep that up, we need to have fund balance available. As I said, we'll have a budget deficit, but it's not operating and acceptable use of reserves. But what we do as we move forward is evaluate our capital needs to make sure that those reserves aren't depleted for capital purposes. Okay, some of our other expenses. So we will be allocating $25,000 in CDBG dollars towards downtown snow removal. That was a service that was newly implemented due to COVID. And it was well received. So it's something that we want to continue to offer to the downtown. So in 2022, we'll set money aside to cover that cost. Additionally, we have DCA funded at $58,000. That's the same level as 2021. And that helps us manage the operating revenues versus expenses, keeping us right at that break there. We don't plan to issue any debt. And the capital is primarily the parking garage with about $202,000 in total capital needs. Okay, our highway aid fund. So this fund is not really an operating fund, I would say. It's primarily capital. All the funding we get comes right from liquid fuels grant funding, and we put all that towards the highway improvements, all the road work that we do. We budget about $680,000 in 2022, so we'll get a little over $500,000 from 2022 liquid fuels allocations. The remainder of the difference will come from fund balance. By the end of 2022, we'll have slightly less than $1 million in fund balance that we anticipate, and our current plan is to continue to draw down on that fund balance until we get to about $500,000. That's the level that we want to make sure we have reserves available for. So we'll use about $100,000 fund balance in 2022 for capital.
Okay. Anyone have questions on the budget overviews?
Are there any questions?
Richard, just a quick question. I know it might be too early to tell, but with the federal funding for infrastructure that passed recently and signed in, do we anticipate being prepared if grants go out for the borough to take advantage of that, or any money coming to the borough, or is it kind of still too early to tell us that this budget?
Yeah, we have talked about this at the staff level. I think that we're well prepared for it. We have undertaken the studies that have established capital improvement plans. So deep into some of those programs now. From the standpoint of the infrastructure bill, I think that the focus that potentially would be for the borough from our infrastructure would be lead service lines. There's money specifically in the budget for assisting in replacing lead service lines. We expect, because of the age of some of our housing stock, There may be some there. Staff has as a goal for early in 2022 to pull all the resources that we have and try to come up with an estimate of where we are from the standpoint of housing stock and potentially service line replacements. And that would be a replacement from the main to the house served in the borough. The borough owns from the main to the curb stop, and then the customer owns from the curb stop to the building served.
Awesome, thank you.
Any questions? I thought the graphic pictures were fantastic. The one showing the property tax as a percentage of the general fund. Be interesting to see the other revenue sources through that same time period and how some of them have dwindled. Just in the future.
We actually talked about it, Richard and I did, and going forward in the first quarter of 2022, when you receive the status update, we're going to start to do a lot more of the education for the public with respect to the tax dollars, where they go, you know, how limited they are, and just all the different variables that play into the impacts of the general fund. And so we're looking forward to that, and we'll probably do more. You'll see more in the Gazette as well.
Richard, when you were, and thanks everybody for all of this, when you were looking at the snapshot of kind of neighboring communities, is the trend on the services and fees for those kind of aligned there? I guess I'm trying to ask, Carlisle's not an outlier in kind of what we're experiencing with solid waste water. Right.
When we look at those services, Carlisle generally falls somewhere. We don't tend to lead the pack in high fees, really, or fees.
But there's no place you can point to where somehow they're those. We keep looking.
Yeah.
Solid waste in particular, I know. I mean, I hear from the public from time to time, well, such and such municipality is picking up the trash pickup, whether it's the toters or it's just about everybody else too. But my first question is, well, when did they bid that? And there's that line that we all remember shortly before we put ours out, where it had been bid out at that point tended to be a lot lower than we were. And I can speak, there's one other municipality I know well, and they are extending the contract or something like that because they know you're going to see another spike. But
yeah, and I would say it's also, well, from solid waste, it's a function also of density of development. So it all comes down to how much is it, how long does it take to have a truck and workers collect material. And if you're in a condensed area like the borough, where there's a lot of traffic, it takes a long time. Whereas if you're in a remote area and you're driving along and you have a remote arm that picks it up and there's only one person operating the system, and it's cheaper. So urban areas tend to be more expensive than rural areas from the standpoint of solid waste. From the standpoint of water and wastewater and stormwater, it comes down to the age of the infrastructure and whether the managers of that systems are pricing their services correctly or not. So if you're a newer municipality where your system is newer than what the borough's is, and you're not funding for the replacement of that infrastructure, then your rates are going to be lower, but in the long term, you'll pay a price for that.
Any other questions? Before we move on to the next stage, does anybody need a break?
All right. So now we get to the department highlights, and Andrea Krause is first on the list.
All right, Parks and Recreation. Okay, so the facilities remained open in 2021 despite the pandemic. We had 124 recreation programs held in 2021. We had 1,380 rentals of our gym and multipurpose rooms at the community center in a 1-year period between August 2020 and August 21. And approximately 16,000 people visited the pool. We've also implemented and updated facility management software, reservation software. Parks and Rec helped to organize the 4th of July fireworks. We held the Halloween parade, and we are about to hold the December holiday parade, Making Spirits Bright parade. We also installed, or had a contractor install entry doors at Hope Station using CDBG funds. Our Parks and Rec staff renovated the Thornwold Amphitheater, as you can see in the picture there. And one of our maintenance staff members became certified in the PA Department of Agriculture pesticide license program. And then speaking about cooperation and collaboration among our departments in the borough, one project that we had some collaboration with Public Works was installing LED light fixtures for our Leetort Park tennis and pickleball courts. I know that the people who play pickleball were very thankful of that. Van Thorson, he's the guy from Public Works who helped with that installation. He, helped me contact vendors, get information about what LED lights to do. He installed the lights, so that was a savings for the borough. The project replaced 12 1,500 watt quartz bulbs with 8 250 watt LED bulbs. So based on 1,000 hours of usage per year, the annual savings is about $1,600 in electric bills. So I thought that was worthy to recognize Van in helping with that project. Another project that our borough staff collaborated with other departments was at our pool. That is typically a place where we receive a lot of help, either from Corey Fleiss staff or the sewer department. Travis Rule helped us install a top pump feature and a water feature pump. He rebuilt, I believe he rebuilt the water feature pump, and we had to get a new top pool pump, but he helped with the installation of that. Working in the sewer department, he has a lot of hands-on experience with all sorts of pumps, something that my maintenance staff doesn't necessarily get to do all the time, so his experience with that was helpful for us in many ways. Also in 2021, as you all know, Parks and Rec and Parks and Rec Board began the process of designing the Fairground Avenue Linear Park with the skate spot and the inclusive play area. That's definitely a multifaceted project that has involved extensive community engagement through public meetings. Our Parks and Rec Board went out on site visiting the neighbors of Fairground Avenue back in August. And as Susan mentioned, we used the Carlisle Engage tool to help us. And in 2022, looking forward to 2022, we are going to be completing our final design of the skate spot. That is on the agenda for the December Parks and Rec Board meeting to kind of try to nail that down, the design of that. And then in early 2022, we'll be working on bid specifications and bidding that project out. And then once it gets bid out, we'll start construction, monitoring the construction, and then paperwork with all of the grant funding. We're also collaborating with the Carlisle Kiwanis Club on the replacement of Fort Letort. That's a huge project for them. It's their 100-year anniversary project that they will be raising a lot of money for. They haven't come out publicly with the public fundraiser for that yet. They'll do that in early 2022. But that's going to be a big project with anticipation of that actually starting and completing in 2022. And then also in 2022, we'll be working and collaborating with the Cumberland Youth Cycling Development for the pump track at Valley Meadows Park. So we've got some projects planned for 2022.
Andrea, I know it wasn't on the screen, but I believe you also added programming this past year to the tune of what, about 20 new?
Yeah, we had 20 new programs. I believe we had about 10 different new instructors. Sometimes all our programs don't go, if they're new, but we have added new program instructors for the public.
Andrew, kind of, we got maybe, I mean, I know during the pandemic, programs closed down. So you've been seeing a pretty significant uptick in utilization.
Yes, but we're not quite to 2019 levels. We're still a little bit down. Like our pool was about 16,000. That's a little lower. We're typically at 23,000, so we're a little lower. So yeah, we're not quite at 2019, but we're getting there. It's not like 2020.
Right. Hopefully nothing better.
Let's hope that's the case.
It was really cool games, right?
Uh-huh.
You had, I think at one of them, ordered those.
Yeah, we installed those last year. Kelsey and Kristen, the rec manager and the rec assistant, they have done those. I think we have it in the budget this year to do like Shark Tail things, but we have it at Biddle Mission, Letort Courts, and Moreland. Some of them have become wind damaged, but it's a way for marketing.
Have
Yeah.
you noticed, have they driven up social media engagement or anything, or is it hard to tell?
It's hard to tell. It is. That's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Excellent.
Yep.
All right, we have Mark up now.
Okay, well, despite the pandemic, 2021 has been another busy year for water resources and public works staff as we attempt to do more with less. Your budget document shows, I believe, we have 51.5 full-time employees. That's the number that we had in 2019. As we approach the end of 2021, we expect to have 43 and a half, so a reduction of 8 staff. Some of that was through attrition where longtime staff members retired or others left, and we took a look, as Susan indicated, at filling those positions, and some of them we filled, some positions we left open as we evaluate the need for replacing those staff members, or we've elected to monitor and hire for those services, such as our auto mechanic. Collaboration among departments, I think, is one of the keys to having us able to do more with less. Andrea highlighted some of the things that Water Resources, Public Works assisted Parks and Recs with. In addition to that, Public Works also assists Downtown Carlisle Association in the setup of downtown decorations on a seasonal basis. We also assist with traffic control, setup and takedown for their parades and other events. And we typically assist other departments with transfer. Since we have the big equipment, we help transfer goods and services around the borough. Public Works staff assisted the parking department this past year with the West Pomfret Street parking lot project, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We also did a lot of work here at Borough Hall, upgrading some offices. The HR director's office was upgraded by public staff. We also expanded some storage space upstairs for some additional offices and did some painting and some other repairs around Borough Hall. We rely on, even though someone is assigned to the wastewater treatment plant, we pull them wherever they're either at Parks and Rec or at the water treatment plant or at field operations. We use our biosolids crew who haul liquid biosolids out on a regular basis in the winter for snow and ice control. And field operations staff goes to the treatment plants and does excavation and piping repair. We continue to seek efficiencies on how we provide our essential public services. During 2021, we hired a new lab supervisor. Our long-term laboratory supervisor retired, and we hired the lab supervisor. We hired a new MS4 coordinator. We hired a new water treatment plant chief operator. We hired a wastewater treatment plant certified operator and 2 maintainers. So that's six new staff. These staff, sometimes we sort of steal them from other municipalities.
They steal from us too.
And they steal from us too, right? They brought in new ideas, and I think they've helped inspire some of our existing staff with how we do things. So we're continuing to look at on them for moving forward. We also promoted existing staff positions within for greater responsibilities based on their skill levels and their job performance. So as far as 2021 highlights, the Carlisle Connectivity Project, that a lot was accomplished this past year. Fairground Avenue is now pretty much completed, and we hope to pave East Street before Thanksgiving. We expect that the Tiger Project will be completed next year. This past year, we put the second component of that on hold while staff looked for additional funding, and we were successful in obtaining another $1.75 million in grant funding. So with that additional grant funding, we now can proceed with the final component of the Carlisle Connectivity Project late in 2022. We also were successful in securing $400,000 in grant funding from PennDOT through its Green Light Go program for traffic signal upgrades. We'll be replacing, using that grant funding, replacing the cameras with our adaptive traffic signals with new technology that rely on infrared light. And we also were successful in securing $220,000 in DEP grant funding for the purchase of a leaf vacuum truck that we hope to have in place next fall. Richard mentioned that we rely on state liquid fuel funds to do road maintenance. We overlaid 2.5 miles of road in 2021 using liquid fuel grants for that. We have 67 miles of roads in the borough. A road typically lasts around 25 years, so that requires paving about 2.75 miles of roads per year. So in the 2022 budget, we start drawing down outstanding balance of liquid fuel funds. Hopefully, the state legislature is able to come up with something tonight, maybe. Probably. to try to supplement liquid fuel funding, since the amount of gas being sold decreases over the year because of higher efficiency vehicles and the shift from gasoline powered to electric powered vehicles. Staff this past year, as Susan noted at the workshop meeting, focused on trying to address our backlog of street cuts for utility street cuts, and I think we took care of 134 of them this year, which reduced our inventory by 95%. We also welcomed 9,900 visitors to the compost site, and expect to go to 10,000 here before it closes in December. I mentioned West Pomfret Street project. That parking lot was repaved. As we've been doing for the last several repaving projects, we take a look at that and see if there's an opportunity for stormwater management. In the case of West Pomfret Street, there was a raised concrete median strip between the parking spots. We removed that and put in an infiltration trench with pervious pavers to allow for water to run off into that trench and infiltrate into the ground, as opposed to moving on to South Fifth Street and causing additional flooding there. Staff purchased some GPS equipment this past year. We used that to survey all of our stormwater system throughout the borough, and we gave that data to our consultant to help with the development of a hydraulic model for our stormwater system. That will be used by the consultant to develop the stormwater master plan. I mentioned that our long-term laboratory supervisor retired in September. The week before he retired, DEP came and did their recertification audit of our laboratory. We had our new laboratory supervisor in place at the time as well, and both of them were able to successfully guide DEP through the recertification process, so that we now are recertified for another 3 years. A big investment that the borough made last year was installing radio transmitters on all of our water meters. We purchased over $1 million of radio transmitters, which staff installed in-house. We've currently done 7 of the 10 metering zones, and we expect to do the remainder of those zones in early 2022. As part of that, we needed to replace 161 of the older water meters that were not the smart meters that were installed in 2010 and 2011. In 2011, those meters were relatively new, so management at that time decided to keep those older meters in place. The sanitary sewer system rehabilitation project was focused on pumping station 1, which is the Wagner's Gap Road pumping station. Before we undertook repairs within that sewer basin, in 2019, you see in the table what the average and max daily flows were. After we completed that project, flows dropped significantly. Now, a lot of that is due to 2019 being a very wet year compared to 2021. However, when you look at the percentage of the wastewater treatment plant flow contributed by pumping station 1, that's more reflective of the reductions that we've seen. So it was a true reduction as a result of the investments made by council. Next slide. Looking ahead for 2022, Water Resources Public Works staff is ready to support the Climate Action Commission with helping to implement whatever the recommendations are of the Climate Action Plan. We have started on that from the standpoint of the evaluation of the wastewater treatment plant to house a solar array for electric power generation. We expect to complete the stormwater master plan next year and start implementing that plan. I mentioned about the new leaf collection equipment that we intend to purchase with grant funding, 90% grant funding, 10% local match. And as Richard mentioned, 2022 is the last year of our current solid waste contract. So we will be exploring very early in the year options associated with solid waste and recycling and what we can potentially do to try to minimize rate increases. I think that's it. One more? Really? Okay, well, we're going to continue with the water distribution system rehabilitation program, replacing 1.5 to 2 miles of pipeline per year. Our sanitary sewer system rehabilitation program, focusing on pumping station number 2 area. Our new laboratory manager has as a goal to evaluate information management systems available for laboratories. When she came in, she noticed that our laboratory was using pencil and paper to do all of everything. And so that'll be something that she focuses on early in 2022. And as we continue to look for chances to boost efficiency, field operations staff working on electronic work orders and doing better tracking of where our staff is being utilized. The last item, biosolids management evaluation, is budgeted for next year to determine the best way of handling biosolids before we go through that $9.5 million investment that's in the 5-year CIP. I think that's it.
Any questions?
I just wanted to note that I'm just very impressed with the planning that you did to put Project 1 off and then getting the grant funding for that. Like, these are things that people complain about. You know, how we spend our money, where, you know, when our roads are tore up and whatnot, and that you're also, you know, although I do want a roundabout at Willow and West, to put that out and also wait for partners, like, those are really smart strategies, and they're just, you know, I noticed it, and hopefully anyone else that ever watch this would just hear, because you just read off a whole bunch of things, and it was maybe lost. It wasn't lost on me. And also all those street fixes from the utilities. That's something also that we hear people complain about. The fact that we did 95% of them, like, that's very impressive. So,
I will let staff know that.
yes.
Programs are still, I see that going along.
Yes, every year it's a balance. We try to do 2.75 miles, but we also are required to do pedestrian curb ramp rehabilitation. So because of changes in staff, we were unable to do as many in-house as we did in previous years, but that's still a program where we do at least 40 or so per year of pedestrian curb ramps. And we do those on streets where we're doing paving.
Mark, I think at last count it was 42 for this year. Is that right? Or did it
Somewhere around between 36 and 40.
Okay, all right. We were reminded on Zoom that we have to project so that people can hear us.
But somebody's actually watching.
Yes, we do have, we have someone watching.
We do.
Yes, one person.
No. Do we know on those programs what percentage of the borough is the community?
I would say less than 10%.
Okay.
I think we looked at it several years ago. There was over about 1,100 or so, and we're picking off 40 or so per year. So
That's still very good.
it's still a long haul. The ones that were initially installed were compliant with regulations and standards of change.
Just off that, that makes it easier.
Uh,
The program.
We have gotten compliments about that. We've also gotten complaints about
I'm
it.
sure you have. I've had people walking on site.
The stormwater, because I know several weeks ago when I was standing on somebody's sidewalk and there was a hole, a gaping hole opening up in their front yard after one of the storms. I mentioned stormwater fee, and I was getting questions about how that's moving along, and I know we've had to build up some revenue for that to be able to anticipate those projects and get the master plan. The master plan coming the first quarter, first half of the year,
Yes.
and then we'll be able to maybe at that point really dig into it and explain to people, how we're prioritizing what needs to be done.
Right. So as far as the stormwater system, we have a permit that was issued by the state that requires us to do certain things related to the Chesapeake Bay, reducing nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment. We've identified those projects. They're included in the 5-year CIP. But the master plan is really meant to address flood issues and old infrastructure and replacing old infrastructure and how we do that in a thoughtful and strategic manner. So the reserves that we've been building up, we expect to draw those down once the plan is completed. But we did use stormwater funding to repair that. That's sinkhole that you mentioned.
Right.
That was done internally.
And we have another project that's coming up using the American Recovery.
Well, we have two projects. One is using community development block grant funding on North Pitt Street, intersection of North Pitt D is in dog. And the second project is North Bedford Street, Kerr Penn, looking at road alignment and also stormwater using American Recovery Act funds for that Susan mentioned, $500,000 for that project.
Anything else? Roll on to
Okay.
the public safety.
Yes, sir.
I know you guys have been patiently waiting.
Oh, excited to go.
Chomping at the bit.
Can't wait.
And we'll have to remind these gentlemen to project. It's a joke, it's an internal joke here. So, yeah, Chief O'Donnell's first.
All right, good evening. For the highlights last year, you got a new fire chief. He started mid-last in June. So that was all good. At least I hope so. But seriously, I would like to thank the borough staff, since it's the first time I really get to speak to the council, is that the borough staff managers, assistant managers, and all the staff here around me for their work and get me up and running, still learning every day. Every day is a training day. And the volunteer stations and the paid staff there and the officers for welcoming me and being very cooperative. And I really appreciate that. Big shoes to fill with Chief Snyder. He was excellent fire chief, emergency management coordinator. As I was coming in, COVID was going back down. A lot of our programs, as you know, we were restricted on what we could do. As we moved forward, we were getting up and running, getting a lot of our public safety programs or training and so forth back up when requirements required. One of the first things I did, I reached out to, I had the opportunity to meet Eric Sands from the Carlisle School District. And working with him, knowing the staffing levels that we have, plus the enormity of the number of daycares and the size of the school district, I know we can't get public education out to everybody. And that's something that, it's kind of near and dear to me. That's one of our primary goals. I don't want to say I stole a program, but I borrowed a program from Washington County, Maryland, put into the school district. And we put it into the Carlisle School District, and it gives the opportunity for the teachers to actually give hand-on-hand screening throughout the school year when they see fit. My past experiences, the first part of the year when we normally do fire prevention, that's when the schools are getting ready for their testing. So this gives them the opportunity to do the training throughout the year, which really benefited us with COVID hitting again, and we restricted our access into the schools, into daycares, nursing homes, etc. So that worked out really well. The other thing that a program that we instituted this year was, and it just really got off and running. We're putting we reached out to the elementary schools. We're doing one elementary school at a time. We send out information to the guardians' parents and ask them if they need smoke detectors for their home, and then they respond back, and we'll supply the smoke detectors for in their homes. So that's a great way to ensure that we have the safety of our residents. And the SNRMA Club of Carlisle reached out to us, and they would like to do something with this. And I think it's going to be more at a county level now, that we're going to be putting some type of warning device into residents that are deaf. So we're working on that program as well. So that'll probably be more something next year. Unfortunate, she put down, she took her name out, but Stephanie is my neighbor upstairs. So I'm bugging her all the time about putting things on social media, and we did that when we couldn't reach out a lot this fall for fire safety. And she did a great job on our recruitment video, an excellent job with that. We would have paid thousands of dollars for that same product, and just with an iPhone and the computer, she came up with that magic. So we appreciate the work that she did promoting the department throughout the year. One thing I enjoy doing is planning. Sergeant Miller from the police department and Captain Works from the fire police, we work a lot with developing plans for all these events that we have here locally within the community. We did a lot of events. We're going to be meeting, I guess, Wednesday for the holiday parade, and that relationship's good. And I can see that expanding. I already had North Middle Township Emergency Management reach out, and they want to do some planning with the fairgrounds and some other things to collaborate on. They've always done this, but we did a little bit more as later in the summer. We reached out to our mutual aid partners, and we drill on our training nights are the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of the month. So we're inviting our mutual aid partners to come in and participate with that. We're all in the same boat, low manpower, low staffing, so if we can work together to have a good delivery of service, exchange ideas, instructors, equipment. So that's worked out well. And in 2022, that we're going to expand that even more. We're going to be doing a lot more work with our mutual aid partners. One of the things we're going to continue to develop with, again, with that training with our mutual aid partners, continue that relationship. We're going to continue to find ways to recruit new members and maintain our current level of staffing. You know, I tell everyone that when you look at the fire departments, it's no different than the other civic organization that you belong to. Your church's civic organization, low numbers, low people want to volunteer. So we're finding out ways to maintain what we have and to recruit new staff. The regional grant that was just received here from I believe West Shore Cog, that is a $2.2 million, which basically goes from Carlisle into Dauphin County. So we're hopefully that will be successful, but it's a large grant. We're hoping that we can benefit from that. One key thing here that Park and Rec did for us for retention, they offered a pool to us this summer for our active members. And with this being a nice hot summer, members appreciated that very much. So hopefully something we can collaborate on those things in the future. And we want to look at more of, with the emergency management side, I'm diving into that, but not as deep. 2022, I want to dive into that even deeper. Is to look at the threats that we have, work with the other surrounding municipalities' emergency management. So like we have an event in Carlisle, how does that affect, Middlesex Township? There's an event on 81, how does that affect if we have an event here downtown Carlisle? How do we manage that? So maybe some tabletop exercises, at least to start with, meeting with those local chiefs and emergency management coordinators and working with that. The other thing here, just to mention quick, is customer service. When I've met with the officers, if we get a call of service, not just our emergency responses, but everyday services, someone calls with a question, is to give them that answer right away. We have technology today. If they can't get hold of me or whoever, we can reach out to the individuals, give them the information that they need. We're going to be doing a lot more joint meetings with our mutual aid partners and with police, local EMS. We want to have some drills, exercises in the upcoming year. I know the active sailing through Dixon College has been mentioned, so we look forward to those relationships over the year. That's it.
Just a quick one that I do for you, Sean, as well. The report that was done on Paris for the act name.
SR6.
Yes, SR6. Are we seeing, is the state doing anything to implement any of those suggestions that help?
That's a several part document. There's what the state can do and what local government can do and then what we can do. Obviously COVID stopped everything, I mean, there's stuff that's in place with some things. But what we're finding is, and this is no official or not official, the best way to recruit is members recruiting members. It doesn't matter what organization you want to go to. But there are some things that state's trying to do that they are implementing, is that they have some of the training be done online. Like the Firefighter 1 class is 200 hours. So they're taking that class and say, okay, with everybody's flexibility with school and work and everything, you can do this program here online, and then you'll come here on the weekends or a particular day and do the practical exercise. That's why the State Fire Commissioner's Office is working on that. It should be out, if it's not already, very soon. So there's things like that are coming, but they're slow now with COVID and all the other priorities that took place.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay. This is going to seem extremely obvious to you. However, the manager's office has built quite a team of collaboration. And I say this not to brown-nose the manager, but reality here is that when you are getting reports from individual departments, and what's happened here is that there's a lot of collaboration that goes on and on. I mean, from policies being online with the assistant borough manager putting them online. I mean, the HR brought an insurance guy around. I needed a gun clearing spot. I contacted Corey, who got a bucket of sand, and we got that squared away. I mean, from Parks and Rec, cutting down the hedges in front of our building, in front of the police station. I mean, the reality here is that what saves you money is the collaboration. And we have crisis every day in the police department, and I can go to JT, Richard, as you know him, and say, hey, I need this. And that's just absolutely incredible, and there's no exaggeration. But so year to date, the police department's responded to 18,679 calls for service. That's averaging about 2,000 calls per month. And we've doing this with officers out with COVID, officers on military leave, officers injured. I mean, it's just a constant flow of different things. And so trying to keep things together, and that's not the count, that's counting, the fact that 2020, we had 5 homicides in that time, and we're still dealing with the references of that, and 1 in 2021. The police department and other departments to the borough, we've done training. We trained codes on officers with de-escalation. We've done emergency planning, as you heard from the fire chief. We've done emergency planning for Borough Hall itself and other facilities. We work with the special fire police. We've even got cops ride doing snow removal.
We do.
We actually had a cop driving, moving snow. So we've got cooperation down pat. The biggest deal for 2021 would be collaborating with the citizens of Carlisle to raise funds for a second K-9, Jackson. As you can see from the picture up there, Jackson will be used not only to locate explosives and tracking of humans or articles, but also act as a community engagement tool. And, I wasn't here at the meeting with the Girl Scouts. It was my understanding that he was community engaging tooling all over the place.
He was.
In addition to that, we have officers serving on the Human Relations Commission, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Carlisle Bridge Builders, the Board of the Partnership for Better Health, the Carlisle CAN, just to name a few. So what we're talking about again and again is collaboration and getting bang for your buck for what you're doing. Each year, the Carlisle Police Department, in collaboration with the Community Cares, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Safe Harbor, the Community Cares, puts on a Christmas party with toys that we collect and give out each year. And that program was started from one of our officers who grew up in foster care. He grew up in foster care and knew what it was like to be without. So what he did was he started this on his own, and now we have a room full of toys. And we'd like to also get you to volunteer to come over and help wrap some of this stuff so we can give it out. So if you have that time, we have to wrap all this stuff up so it'll save my cops. This past year we did increased foot and bike patrol. We also applied for and received several grants, reimbursable overtime for seatbelt enforcement, aggressive driving, pedestrian crossing enforcement. You'll see police officers out wearing vests down by the college, letting people know about crossing the street, on the light, not jaywalking, and not looking at your phone. Now let's talk real quick about we've also mostly turned our fleet into hybrid vehicles, which should give us a savings on fuel for future years. Some of our future plans, the department is exploring leadership restructuring along with shift changes that have the potential to better serve the citizens of Carlisle. We're embarking on a robust leadership training program that will allow further accountability between the citizens, the officers, and management. Furthermore, the department is looking to improve its records management system for better transparency and also ability to recall incidents and find out where they are. All this other stuff up there is about reducing our carbon footprint. Great stuff. We'd like to do all that. But the idea here is that what you're getting for the money that you serve and to work together with this team here, like I can call any one of these folks around this table, the quiet professionals that they are, that help us and we work together. It's been huge. That would conclude my budget, whatever you call this thing. And should you have any questions, please feel free.
Any questions?
Did I project enough?
I think so.
I know who our Zoom participant is now, because I got a text message, and she's offering out rep presents. So.
we actually can use it. Like I said, shocked. They started with sending presents in through Amazon. And they started during the summer. And like I said, we have a room full of presents for underserved kids. And that's a huge deal. So the idea here is that we're trying to be out there and be more accessible than we've ever been before. And that's what our goal is, to be out there, be more accessible, and also that the transparency. As much as I kicked and screamed about the policies, but the manager and assistant manager, we got them online, we got it out there, and we're trying to do better.
Okay.
Next up is Mr. Snyder.
Yes. So 2021, for the Sustainable Community and Economic Planning Department, we're in a transition between the old department and the new. Hope to have the new director on soon. So we've been working on a few things throughout the year just to keep the department operating and make sure that the work is completed. We've had a real high emphasis on compliance, transitioning from maybe kind of how things were during COVID, a little bit more back to normal. One of the tools that we've used to help get compliance for possible violations is having our codes enforcement officers use door hangers, post them on properties just a friendly reminder, say, hey, can you take a look at this? Give us a call if you have any questions. That's been very successful and helpful in minimizing the number of issues that there are managing those violations. We've also increased the use of technology. The software system that we've had, that we've been using for the codes department has actually been used by the borough since 2009, which started in 2009 as a finance, payroll, utility billing system. There's additional parts of that technology that we've added over time, and we started using it for permits and codes a few years ago. With the staff turnover, took the opportunity in 2020 and 2021 to increase the training for the staff so that they can more effectively use that technology to perform their functions. There's still ways we can improve and do more with the technology. We look to have more training so that the officers in the department have a little better understanding of how that software can help them do their job. But look to do more of that here in the near future. It's also the software, we're also considering that to help with the rental housing ordinance, the implementation of that. We're hopeful that the software will provide a tool to allow us to manage that process as well. Some other services that the department, we talked about before, providing the trash bag deliveries to residents. That department stepped up and helped with that. The department's really stepped up in a number of other areas during this transition period, helping with HARB and Planning Commission and Zoning Hearing Board and things that maybe they didn't typically do, but they've been a huge help just jumping in, making sure that the work gets done and things get completed as needed. Another new project this year that we worked on, you had approved a cable franchise agreement earlier this year, a new telecommunications option for residents. That project's been ongoing, and Mark and his team and Stephanie have been an integral part of that, just from project oversight to inspections to permitting to communications. I think you're seeing now on social media, Stephanie posts, hey, this is where they're going to be working today. So we're really excited about the potential services that's going to provide, just another option for our residents. So that's been something that's really been positive. And then also just to, we also have the codes enforcement officers regularly attend neighborhood group meetings. They provide updates. They're there to answer any questions and provide any follow-up on any issues that may arise. So they've been very good about attending those meetings as well. And just to close the loop, to touch on engagement a little bit more, we talked a little bit about Engage Carlisle or Citizen Lab. We've had a number of successful projects on there. We're up to 385 users, which I know may not sound like a lot, but I think the feedback we've received from the company has been, that's been a very good start. We just launched it, I think, in April of this year, so we've really only been using it about 6 months. So that's off to a very good start. Actually, the co-founders of the company are coming in, I think, Wednesday. They'll be meeting with Mark, Andrea, Stephanie, and me. It's just to learn more about the product, see what else we can do, hopefully give us some feedback on how the projects that we've done and how they see as ways we can maybe do that better. And also, just the regular social media work that Stephanie does on Facebook and LinkedIn. We've increased our followers. We're up to about almost 770 on LinkedIn. So if you see our stuff, like it, share it. We're trying to get more followers there. I think that can really be a really good recruiting tool, not just for employees, but businesses and residents. Just the more we put information out there about the work that we're doing here for the borough, I think we'll make everybody see what a wonderful community this is.
Any questions?
I'd just like to make one comment. I know that he's very humble, but I just need to call it out to everyone's attention. Owen has had a huge lift this year through this interim time without a planning zoning codes manager. He has stepped up didn't hesitate. And actually, I am so impressed with where he's been able to take that team upstairs in this interim time. Zoning was not one of those items that I believe he's strong in numbers, but I think he's got a better appreciation of it like I did years ago. And I'm just really thankful to have him be part of the team. He actually is our lead on information technology. What you're seeing here, that he took that, and that he was the project lead on that. I believe it was his idea for us to really elevate our presence on LinkedIn. Works very closely with Stephanie. So I'm just need to say thank you. I thank all my team members, but lots of times, Owen behind the scene, he's the right-hand guy there in the manager's office, and he has really stepped up this year. So thank you.
You can't even make that comment.
I know he can't. He just hates that. It's all good.
There's no questions for Owen after that.
No, none.
Richard is a finance part. Again, thank you, Amy. Move on to finance.
Okay, looking at our 2021 highlights, the finance department first half of the year focuses heavily on the audit. That usually concludes in June, and then July we start on the budget. So that's kind of how we structure our year, and the documents get bigger and bigger as we go through. But our 2020 audit, as you recall, was an unmodified opinion. It's a lot of work to put that together and work with the departments to make sure that we're staying in compliance and being responsible for spending. So we were happy to receive that. We also, just like a week before the budget was published, we got our 2021 Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. The reason the document's so big is it's an education tool. They have requirements that we need to meet to inform the reader more than just say how we're spending money. We talk about policies and future planning. So we did receive our 2021 budget award, and we're going to try to keep that in for 2022. We got a 2019 GFOA award for our audited financial statements for 2019. We did submit the 2020, so we hope to get that again. One of our goals was related to e-commerce and allowing residents and property owners to pay taxes via credit card. So in 2021, we got that implemented successfully. The credit card fees are paid by the credit card holder, the individual. So since we collect fees for the school district and the county, we tried to make sure that we weren't paying costs. Other highlights, as Amy alluded to, the Medical Insurance Committee worked closely with several staff members from different departments, and it was a really good experience getting to see different perspectives from people with different backgrounds and skills coming together to talk finance. How can we save some money? And they did a great job. We also issued our 2021 bond series, $22 million. That involved going to Moody's, meeting with them, discussing, presenting to them as to why the borough was a responsible financial manager, and we were able to achieve that AA1 credit rating again. We always wish that we could go to the very tip top to get that AAA, but it's not really something from their perspective that it's easy to achieve. That takes into account the median income of our residents, how much build out do we still have available to us, and some of those things we just can't change. So that may be the highest we'll ever get, but we'll keep trying. And then we also worked with Amy and Owen actually to get that human resources module up and running. It was pretty heavy paper in the past, so we're trying to move things into Springbrook more, and then also working to implement an employee self-service website, trying to get the employees access to information electronically rather than relying on all the paper that we use. Looking forward to 2022, again, we want to get an unmodified opinion for our audit. We want to get the award for the budget. We also will be evaluating our billing process. As Mark said, they were installing all the devices to make our water meters smart. On our side of things, we're working as they implement them to convert them to radio read, so that we can identify leaks ahead of time. People are getting huge bills after a quarter and potentially seeing what we can do to switch it to maybe a monthly billing as we go. And then finally, we're going to look at the downtown parking. One of our goals for 2022 is evaluate the leases to see how we can be more efficient with those so that we don't have a lot of empty space and we can manage our parking in a better way.
Did we lose it again? There we go. We off? Okay.
No one wants to breathe,
Do we have any outstanding fees or payments that residents have that they no longer, that they can't use credit card? Or has that, to your point, is that fully working now? Is there any way that residents interacting with the borough now they can use?
Yeah, they have access to pay credit card pretty much for all of our services. But one of the things that we are looking at currently and probably will implement in 2022 is seeing how we can adjust those fees. Right now we pay about $60,000 in credit card fees that we eat. And so we're trying to see how we can adjust those so we're passing it on and not just funding it through taxpayer dollars.
Awesome, thank you.
The bond rating, is that the advantage of going from where we are to AAA? There's hardly anything there. It doesn't make a big difference in your rate.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's great to have that. To wear that proudly along with all American City.
Right. Yeah, and especially you're seeing in the news some municipalities who can't even issue debt. So it's an accomplishment to me.
We'll move on to, we have our feed up, and so is there any public comment? Anybody have any questions, comments? Do we have anything on Zoom?
I do not have anything on Zoom.
We can move on to action items. We have several series of motions that we need to make on our budget hearing tonight. First, we would need a motion to approve the 2022 proposed budget for public display and public comment purposes. There's such a motion. There's a motion by Councilor Cramps. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Landis. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And as opposed, the motion passes. Next, we will need to establish a public hearing on December 9th, 2021 at 6:45 p.m. for the purpose of receiving public comment regarding fiscal year 2022 proposed budget. And following the hearing, council may consider adopting the budget by resolution with or without amendment, provided the budget is balanced during its regularly scheduled council meeting, December 9th, 2021, commencing at 7 p.m. Is there such a motion? Motion by Councilor Cramps. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Landis. You guys make this easy for me. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and the motion passes. Next, we will may authorize the drafting and advertising of the following ordinances: tax and fire ordinance, levying a tax for general borough purposes for calendar year 2022 and succeeding years, until altered by Borough Council at the rate of 3.058 mils on each dollar of assessed valuation of real estate. And furthermore, retaining the fire service appropriations tax at 0.437 mils on each dollar of assessed valuation for year 2022 and succeeding years until altered by council. Additionally, water rate ordinance increasing water rates 3.48% for water rentals and charges for consumption bills subsequent to May 1, 2022. And finally, sewer rate ordinance increasing sewer rates 3.37% for sewer rentals and charges for discharge billed subsequent to May 1, 2022. Is there a motion to authorize those ordinances? I'm sorry, drafting and advertising those ordinances.
So,
There's a motion by Council Krebs. Is there a second? Second by Council Landis. A follow question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. And that concludes our business tonight, and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.